You know what time it is. Yes! Yes! You know what time it is. This is an identity disc. Everything you do, everything you learn will be imprinted on this disc. Should you lose your disc or fail to follow commands, you'll be subject to immediate de-resolution. That'll be all. No, just kidding. That's just a sneak peek of one of my costumes. Shout out to all of my Tron fans. I remember watching Tron on VHS very early in my childhood, probably at the age of 7 or 8. I had a childhood babysitter. Her name was Lauren. Shout out to Lauren. She was one of my favorite people at Olivet Institutional Baptist Church, my home church in Cleveland. And Laura always she was cool, she was funny, she was patient, would take us out to the library or go grab some pizza or Mr. Hero, and would always have some cool movies for us to watch, and would actually, pay attention and hang out with us. And she enjoyed me and my youngest brother's company, and she was cool. But that was one of the movies I distinctively remember very, very, very vaguely. But love Tron Legacy. I saw Tron Ares twice now in IMAX, and it is well worth it, and I hope they continue the franchise. It really deserves another sequel. Do not listen to what the critics say, y'all. Go see it for yourself. If you're able to see it in IMAX, go see it. And in 3D, because it was definitely worth it. It was definitely worth it. Now, we're not here to talk about movie reviews and the magic of cinema. We're here to read a story. Now we're back. Let's get into it. Let's go. Chapter 18, The River. The great formless vehicle of the light rushed on through the mountain as if it were a vessel carried along by an underground river. John Rowland sat still and silent with a face like stone, and they did not look at him for more than an instant. It was not bearable. At last Jane said, "The tree? Gummery, what does she mean? She said, 'Not all your things of power will help you to the tree.'" Merriman stood tall and imposing in his dark cloak, his hood falling like a cowl over his neck. His white hair gleamed in the brightness all around, and so did Brands beside him. They looked like two figures from some unknown race. "The midsummer tree in the Chiltern Hills of England," Merriman said. "The tree of life, the pillar of the world. Once every 700 years it may be seen in this land, and on it the mistletoe that will bear its silver blossom on that one day. And whoever shall cut the blossom at that moment when it opens fully from the bud shall turn events and have the right to command the old magic and the wild magic, to drive all rival powers out of the world and out of time." Barney said, almost whispering, "And we're going to the tree." "That is where we are going," Merriman said, "and so is the dark, following the path it has been planning all along to make the final moment of its last and greatest rising, the moment when the silver is on the tree." Title drop. "But how can you be sure we shall cut the blossom and not the dark?" Jane could see nothing but the rushing brightness all around them, but for an instant she had a fierce image of the gray sky filled with riding lords of the dark, with Bloodwood and Rowlands, the White Rider, laughing long, cold laughter at their head. "We have the sword Erias," Merriman said, "and they do not. And although it is two-edged and may be possessed by either light or dark, yet it was indeed made at the command of the light. If Bran can keep the sword safe, and if the Six and the Circle can keep Bran safe, then all will be well. And where the midsummer tree grows tall," his voice deepened with the lilt of the verse, "by Pendragon's sword the dark shall fall." Will glanced automatically at the crystal sword glinting in Bran's hand. The blade was clear now, the blue flickering fire gone. But as he looked, it seemed to him that on the very point of the blade, the dancing blue fire again began to glow, very faint and dim at first, but growing, creeping inch by inch up the blade towards the golden hilt, and the movement of the rushing river of light about them began to change. It became more pronounced, as though they were indeed tossed upon a river. They seemed to be in a boat, the six of them, and John Rowland's Will knew it even though he could see nothing tangible around them at all. His eye came to Barney and stopped, and he smiled to himself. The younger boy was sitting oblivious to anyone around him, grinning a private grin of pure pleasure and the sensation swirling through his mind. The fear put into him by Glindoir's men had evaporated, and there was no ounce of nervousness in him now, but only wonder and astonishment and delight. Barney looked up suddenly as if he knew Will was looking at him. The grin widened, and he said, "It's like the best kind of dream." Oh, hold on 1 second, y'all. My alarm is going off on my other phone. Hold it! Hold it. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, y'all. Yes, it is, said Will, but don't relax into it. You can't trust what will happen. I know, Barney said equably. Honest, I know, but all the same. It was a head-back, beaming, yelping shout of joyful excitement, spontaneous and startling, and every face turned. Their apprehensiveness faded for a moment, and even Merriman, stern for the first instant, laughed aloud. Yes, he said. We need that as much as the sword, Barney. And then suddenly they were out into the day, into gray skies with a watery sun trying in vain to break through thickening cloud, and they could see that their boat was a long, high-prowed, deckless vessel set with thwarts, and that there were other boats before and behind them of the same shape filled with figures who could not properly be seen. The mist hovered about them again, and with it a wavering of the air like the tremor of heat, though there was no heat. Will heard a faint familiar music in the air, delicate and fleeting. He looked out at the water and saw glimmering wavelets and an indistinct shore with green fields beyond and the shadowy figures of men and horses. For an instant, the mist parted in drifting tatters, and he saw hills rising beyond, and the smoke of fires, and an army gathered there waiting, rank after rank of men, many of them on horseback and small, sturdy, muscular animals that looked as tough and dark and determined as the riders they bore. It was a cavalry armed with glinting swords, waiting, tense. Then the mist closed again, and there was only gray-white space. Who are they? Simon said hoarsely. You saw them then? Will glanced around. The three of them were grouped beside him, with Bran and Merriman standing remote in the bow of the boat, and John Rowland's a grim, hunched figure in the stern. Who are they? Jane said. All three Drews seemed deeply intent, staring vainly into the mist. Will could see Barney's hands convulsively opening and closing as if longing to be put to use. Sounds came out of the grayness, suddenly vague, confused from every direction at once. The clash of weapons, the neighing of horses, the shouts and screams and triumphant yells of men fighting. Simon spun about, his face twisted with frustration. Oh, where are they? What is it? Will! It was a cry for help, pleading. Merriman's deep voice said from the bow with an ache of the same desperation, You may well yearn towards it. It is the first making and breaking of our land. This long-worked land so many centuries on the anvil. It is Mons Badonicus, the Battle of Badon, where the dark comes rising, and how goes the day? The voice rose into a searching shout. A question asked of no one visible, thrown at random into the gray mist. And out of the mist, as if in answer, a long shape loomed, a boat longer and larger than their own, taking shape nearer the bank as they drifted towards it on the stream. It was decked with weapons, filled with armed men with plain green flags flying its stem and stern. It seemed the boat of a general rather than a king, but there was the bearing of a king in the figure at its prow, a square-shouldered man with sunburned face and clear blue eyes, brown hair streaked with gray, and a short gray beard. He wore a short blue-green cloak the color of the sea, and beneath it armor like that of a Roman, and round his neck, half hidden but glittering with a light like fire, he wore Will's linked circle of signs. He looked at Merriman and raised a hand in triumphant salute. Go well, my lion. We have them now at last, and they will go back to their own lairs and settle. Leave us to live in peace for a while. He sighed. His bright eyes moved to Bran and softened. Show me the sword, my son, he said. Bran had been gazing at him unwavering since the boat had first appeared. Now, without a flicker of change in his intent gaze, he drew himself upright, a slim, pale figure with his colorless face and white hair, and raised the blue flaming blade of Erias in a formal salute. And still it flames for the dark, still the warning. The words were another sigh. Bran said fiercely, But in this time too we shall drive out the dark, my lord. We shall come before them to the tree, and then drive them out and away, out of time. Of course. And I must return something that was brought to my aid, and that has served its purpose and must now serve yours. He put back his cloak and lifted the linked signs from around his neck. Take them, Sign Seeker, with my blessing. Will came to the edge of the boat and took the gleaming chain from the strong brown hands. He put it about his own neck, feeling the weight pull at his shoulders. Thank you, my lord. Mist whirled round the two boats on the gray river, lifted for a moment to give a glimpse of the crowded armada of shades behind and before, then fell again, leaving all indefinite and vague. The circle is complete, but for the one, Merriman said, and the six are strong together. Indeed they are, and all is well done. The keen blue eyes flickered over Jane and Simon and Barney, standing silent and awed, and Arthur gave them a nod of greeting, but his head turned again to Bran, as if by compulsion, back to the pale, vulnerable figure standing there, holding the sword Erias, his right hair sleek in the mist and the tawny eyes creased a little against the light. And when all is done, my son, the voice was soft now, when all is done, will you sail with me in Predwin, my ship? Will you come with me to the Silver Circle Castle at the back of the North Wind, where there is peace beneath the stars and the apple orchards grow? Yes, said Bran. Oh, yes! His pale face was alight with joy and a kind of worship. Will thought, looking at him, that he had never seen him fully alive before. So you're not catching on. King Arthur Pendragon is the father of Bran Pendragon. So Bran's mother was the lady Guinevere, who is King Arthur's wife. However, in the lore of those stories, Guinevere unfortunately was not faithful to Arthur and had at one point in time fallen in love with someone else and was pregnant and did not believe that the baby was Arthur's, and so rather than having the baby destroyed, she ran with the help of Merlin to another time period. She jolted herself into the future, or in the context of this novel, the present day, which is the late 70s. So now that father and son have met face to face, which come to find out Bran is Arthur's actual biological son, Bran is just overjoyed. He's just happy. He's like, wow, I get to meet my dad. And it will be an easier rest than the last, and without end, unlike the other. Arthur looked away into the mist, his bearded face sorrowful, looking at the time past from which he spoke to them. For our great victory against the Dark at Badon does not last so very long. We British stay untroubled in our own parts of these islands, and the English peaceably in theirs, and the Pax Arcturus thrives for a score of years. When the Saxons come again, those bloody pirates, a trickle and then a flood battering westward through our land from Kent to Oxford, from Oxford to the Severn, and the last of the old world is destroyed, our cities and our bridges and our language, all vanishes, all dies. There was an anguish in the voice now, as a long, aching lament. Lost. All lost. The savages bring in the dark, and the servants of the dark thrive. Our craftsmen and our builders leave or die, and none replace them except to deck out barbaric kings. And on our own roads, in the old ways, the green grass grows. And men flee westward, Merriman said gently, out of the bow of their vessel, to the last corners of the land where the old tongue lives, for a while, to those places where the light waits always for the force of the dark to ebb, so that the grandsons of the invaders may be gentled and tamed by the land their forefathers despoiled. And one of those fleeing men carries a golden chalice called a grail that bears on its side the message by which a later time will be better able to withstand the last and most menacing rising of the dark, when it will rise not through the spilling of blood, but through the coldness in the hearts of men. Arthur bent his head in a kind of apology. The mist blew round him. He seemed fainter now. The sea-blue cloak less bright. True. And the grail is found, and all the other things of power, by the 6 of you and the light thus fortified, so that all of us in the circle may come to its aid at the end. I know, my lion, I do not forget the hope promised by the future, even though I weep for the pains suffered by my land here in the past. The river began to swing the boats apart. The sound of battle and of triumphant shouting rose again from the mists around them. Arthur's voice grew distant, rising in a last call. "Sail the river! Sail on! I shall be with you in a little while." And the ship and its flags and armed men were gone into the bright mist, and instead a darkness came whirling around them on both sides on the gleaming stream, a darkness as deep and as vast as the ship, battering at their minds, rising, enveloping. John Rowlands rose slowly to his feet in the stern of the boat where he had been silently sitting. Will could see him only as a vague shape. He could not tell how much Rowlands saw of what was happening. Excuse me. Rowlands reached out an arm into the darkness, standing pressed against the gunwale of the boat, and with fear and longing in his voice, he called out something in Welsh, and then he called, "Blodwyn! Blodwyn!" When Will closed his eyes at the pain in the voice, and tried not to hear or think, but John Rowlands came stumbling up the boat towards them, his hand turned for guide towards the blue flaming blade of the sword in Bran's hand, and when he reached them, he put out one hand and grasped Merriman by the shoulder. Light glimmered around them as if they carried the moon in their vessel, sailing through clouds, yet the light came only from the sword, burning like a cold torch. John Rowland said, taut with anguish, "Was she always so? Always from outside the earth, like yourself?" He was gazing at Merriman like a man begging for his life, pleading, "Was not one part of her ever real? Was not one part of her ever real?" Merriman said unhappily, "Real?" For the first time since Will had come to know him, his voice was without authority, seeking lost. "Real? We live in your world as you do, John. Those of the light or those of the dark we feel and see and hear as you do. If you prick us, we bleed. If you tickle us, we laugh. Only if you poison us, we do not die, and there are certain feelings and perceptions in us that are not in you. And these, in this last resort, have dominion over the others. Your life with your Bloodwind was real. It existed. She felt it just like you. But there was another more powerful side to her nature as well, of which you never had sight." John Rowlands flung out one arm and struck the side of the boat a fierce blow that his hand did not seem to feel. "Lies!" The word was a shout. "That is all it was. A deceiving, a pretending. Can you deny that? I've been living my life on a lie." "All right." Merriman's broad shoulders drooped for a moment, then slowly straightened. His voice seemed to Will to hold a great weariness. "I am sorry, John. Do you blame the light? Would it have been less of a lie if you had never discovered the dark?" "The hell with both of them," John Rowland said bitterly. He stared coldly at Merriman, at Bran, at Will, and his voice rose in anger and misery. "The hell with all of you! We were happy before any of this. Why couldn't you leave us alone?" And while the words rang in the air to all of them on the boat, a figure appeared immediately out of the whirling mist, darkness as if riding on the echoes of the angry voice. A dark shape riding, each of them saw it in a different way. This towering figure, cloaked, the hood put back from the arrogant head. Bran saw the Lord of the Dark who had hounded Will and himself through the Lost Land, in wild pursuit, through the city, in wait beside the castle, in roaring fury at their achieving of the sword. Will and Jane, Simon, and Barney saw a figure they hoped to forget, from days early in their lives when they had caught up in a search for the Grail of Light, a black-haired, black-eyed man named Hastings. fierce and powerful. And in the end, raging with the urge for revenge, Will saw the Black Rider riding his black stallion in a whirling, cloudy torrent of the dark. With one side of his face turned awry out of sight, he caught the glare of a blue eye beneath glinting chestnut hair, and the sweeping of a robed arm as the rider turned to his saddle, pointing at Bran. The tall horse reared up over them, hooves glinting, eyes white and wide. Beside him, Will saw Jane instinctively duck. "A challenge, Merlion!" the Black Rider called. His voice was clear but faint, as if muffled by the surrounding dark. "We claim there is no place for the Pendragon, the boy, in this flight and this quest. A challenge! He must go!" Merriman swung around, turning his back in contemptuous dismissal, but the rider did not move but stayed by them, his spinning dark tower of cloud rushing with them down the misty river, yet moving gradually more slowly, just as the boat on which they themselves traveled, Will realized was slowing now. Soon it was motionless, resting on the still water. For a moment there came a break in the misty darkness ahead, as if a watery sunlight were breaking through. They saw hints of green fields, of swelling green hillsides, and the darker green of trees all hung about still with ragged mist so that nothing was properly distinct. And then through the mist came flying a pair of swans, their great white wings beating the air so that the wind sang through the feathers. They flapped slowly overhead, now visible, now gone, now bright again, through the patches of mist, and then both dived and came awkwardly down on either side of the boat, skidding into the river, settling, long necks taking back their peaceful, graceful curve. And in the moment of raising his eyes from the two handsome birds, Will saw, as if standing high on the prow of their boat, the figure of the lady. She was neither old nor young. Now her beauty ageless, she stood a straight upright figure with the wind blowing around her, the folds of a robe blue as an early morning sky. Will leapt forward, overjoyed, reaching out a hand in welcome, but the lady's fine-boned face was grave. She looked at Will as if she did not properly see him, and then at Merriman, and then at Bran. Her gaze flickered over the others, with a hint of a pause for Jane, and then came back to Merriman. "The challenge holds," she said. Will could not believe what he heard. There was no emotion in the musical voice. It stated merely without expression, but with utter finality. Merriman took one quick, unthinking step forward and then stopped. Will, not daring to look up, could see the long fingers of one gnarled, bony hand curved tight into a fist, the nails cutting into the palm. "The challenge holds," the lady said again, a faint quiver in her voice. "For the dark has invoked the high law against the light, claiming that Bran ap Arthur has no rightful place in this part of time, and may therefore not take the journey to the tree. That challenge is their right and must be heard, for without the hearing, the high magic will let nothing go further forward in this matter." The beauty of her face was a grave sadness, and she reached out one arm, graceful as a bird's wing in the falling folds of the blue robe, and pointed the 5 fingers of her hand toward Bran. For an instant a breeze blew on the still river, and there was a hint of delicate music in the air, and then the blue light died out of the blade of Erias, and in a strange, slow movement, without a sound, the sword fell to the deck of the ship, and Bran stiffened, and then stood motionless, upright, his arms at his sides. A slim, dark-clad figure with the face almost as white now as the hair came out of movement as if out of all life. A misty brightness took shape and hovered all about him, like a cage of light, so that he was still in the company and yet kept separate. The lady looked out into space at the hovering figure of the Black Rider in the cloudy dark. "Speak your challenge," she said. Baby, we are almost to the end, okay? And that is where we will end for tonight. Thank you all so very much for joining me for another reading of Storytime with Chris. Archimedes says hello. And I will see you all next time, my lovelies. Bye-bye.